Hey everyone, Daniel Topol here, and welcome to the inaugural Dancing with Doubt podcast, where we go deep into how leaders have overcome adversity to unleash their success and delve into why we're really here. It's a very special day for me today, being the first episode to kick us off. Safe to say, it's taken many months of hard work and no shortage of my own doubt. But here we are. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with my good friend Russ Macumber. Russ is the co-founder and managing director of Impressive USA, one of Texas's top SEO, PPC, and performance marketing agencies. Russ is also a fellow podcast host, mentor, award-winning marketer, in-demand keynote speaker, husband, father of 4 beautiful kids, and all-round one of the warmest, most genuine guys I've ever met. We'll be getting into some really interesting topics, such as the importance of role models and mentors, the relationship between one's personal and business identity, and overcoming sometimes invisible demons to launch into a brighter future. So for me, this is a really deep dive into the notion of just not overcomplicating your sense of purpose, of getting back to basics of being human and enjoying the journey in the process. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for lending me your ears wherever in the world you are. I hope you find this episode insightful and stimulating. Season 1, Episode 1, let's get into it. Russ, awesome to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Really, really good to be here. I'm pumped to be your first guest. How cool.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time coming, and to be honest, really honored to have someone of your caliber and also a good friend with me here today. So yeah, thanks heaps, man. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Let's do it.
So Russ, I know that you recently moved to Texas, and you've already built up an award-winning American arm of your marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos, by the way. Before we get into the meat, I do have a very important and serious question to ask you. Does anyone actually understand your Australian accent over there?
You know what? It surprised me how tough it's been for a lot of people to understand me. It's just certain words, certainly letters. If I have to spell things out, whenever I say Macumber, I'll go M-A-C, and they always say M-I-C, and I have to go E for apple. So there's that's like just one little thing, but yeah, it's actually been really. I mean, I guess I do have a pretty thick bogan twinge to my accent, so that probably makes it a bit tougher for them. And on top of that, I do look kind of Mexican, so I get a lot of like strange looks of people thinking like, what is going on with this guy? Like he's clearly like a Latino, but he's got this bizarre accent. It has been tough, but you know, I get to share a little bit of you know how Australians pronounce things, and in some of the speaking that I do, I run you know big groups through, you know, making sure that when you're saying any word with er on it, rather than say you say ah, so it's not down under, it's down under, not Macumber, it's Macumber. So yeah, it's a bit of fun.
Nice. Love the adjustments.
Yeah.
And Russ, on the topic of your new home, look, I can only picture and imagine how challenging it has been to move to a new land, especially with a large family, set up a business, and doing that all in a COVID environment. You know, obviously we've had our challenges over the past few years, all over the world. Tell us how did that go for you?
You know what, well, yes, like doing it through COVID at the Australian end was really tricky. Tell you what, coming over here, it was very different because Texas didn't really lock down very much. They didn't really speak of it at all from the moment we got here. We've been here for 16 months. So when we left Melbourne was in the midst of like a level 4, level 5, whatever the highest, you know, 5-kilometer radius, 1 hour exercise, 1 hour essential services, whatever it was, shopping. And, you know, we hadn't seen like a restaurant or a bar or anything like that for months. And then you get over here and, you know, people are hugging and they're shaking your hand and the bars are full. And it was like, whoa. So from a COVID
people are being
perspective,
human.
Getting out of Australia, really, really tough. What's that? Sorry?
I said people are being human.
I missed it. Sorry, what did you say? Oh my
people
God.
You know
what?
Human.
What's weird is you get institutionalized by, yeah, you get totally institutionalized by like that whole lockdown period. And we were like scared to touch doors and stuff. It was just strange. And then it didn't take long for Texas to get into us and for us to realize, oh, wow, okay, everyone's just living a normal life over here. So COVID made it tough. Outside of that, just the challenges of moving countries. They're both Western countries, and I read something recently which said there's like a lot of the things at the extremes are very different, and then I can't remember the exact quote, but it's like some stuff you think is going to be the same and it's not, but then some stuff is very similar. But coming over here as a family, 4 kids, getting them into schools, health insurance, social security, opening up a bank account, any type of finance, rent, all these different things. Like, it was a huge challenge. And then on top of that, trying to get the business up and running, it was very, very tricky first few months. Those first 3 months, especially, were like pretty painful, like a lot of life admin, a lot of business admin, and not feeling like you're getting a lot of traction. But then after that first, 3 months, the start of this year, January 2022, we'd been here about 4 months. We really started to get into a bit more of a groove, which was good.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of groove, I did see that you recently won an award or two. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that was really cool. So just for full transparency, this agency started a couple of years ago, but I was running it from Australia, the US arm of this agency. And that presented challenges. We were supposed to be here a couple of years earlier, but COVID happened. So, that happens. But then coming here, the agency that was being run remotely and through a shitload of challenges and like staff issues and client issues, we basically had to start from scratch this year. So to come out at the end of 2022, yes, we did win a couple of awards. We were named a top 5 agency by Clutch in the whole of Texas. So top 5 as an SEO PPC performance agency. So that was huge for us. And then at the recent Austin Business Awards, we won the award for best company culture. We beat out like Accenture and some other, pretty big players. So that was, again, just another like, wow, we've really, shaken some things up and done some pretty cool things. We signed a big client just before the new year started. So Fuzzy's Tacos, they're owned by Dine Group, which is like Applebee's and IHOP. Like, they're now within, the impressive stable of clients. So it's been a really big, huge 12 months. It's funny because as you're going through it, you're like, oh, I just want to grow quicker. I wish this was working this way. I want to do things differently. But then you look back after 12 months and you go, holy cow, we did a lot.
Yeah, that sounds huge, man. And to have done it in a new land with obviously, a large family and all the settling in and adjustment period, that's really momentous. Yeah, massive kudos. That's very respect that.
Yeah, cheers, Dan. It's been a big year, and we're looking forward to another huge year this year and just more and more growth. I feel like we've got a bit of we understand it here now. The biggest thing for us was, are they gonna get our product? Are we going to be able to connect? Are we going to be able to make them see the way we market, the way we do performance marketing? Are they going to understand us? And all signs are pointing in a really positive direction for our growth and future plans.
Mm-hmm. And the sort of way that you did business in Australia, how have you found? Do people warm up to it quite nicely? Is there a massive difference between doing business in America versus how you did it here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Interestingly, when I speak about people not understanding me, that's not so much in a business context. Usually in business, it's been, if anything, the Australian accent's a pretty big bonus. Like, it's a point of difference. I do keynote speaking around the country, and the accent straight away is just like, it's something to remember me by. And if I'm being honest, I think I probably sound a bit smarter than I am, because they just think, oh, it's a bit exotic. It sounds a bit different. He's saying stuff a little bit differently to how we usually hear it. He's got some ideas which are maybe a bit different. So there's definitely a competitive advantage in being just that little bit different over here. The challenge with the accents, funnily enough, it tends to happen more in like further out from the city and like service-based businesses and the like, potentially people who just aren't across accents as much. But from a business perspective, we've had a really strong year, and the Australian accent and just even the Australian way of doing business, I think, is refreshing in a lot of ways. Like, I'm not big on I'm not big on doing business with people that we can't actually help. So I'm pretty honest up front, and I'll point people in another direction. And I've had people, try really hard to get us to work with them, and I've had to tell them, I can't take your money. We're not a good fit for what you want. What you need is this type of agency. In fact, I know a guy who does this. You should. I'm going to email you, an intro to him straight after this call, because he's going to be way, way better for your business. And that kind of approach, which I've always had because I've worked in sales and in marketing for a long time, and it's a long career. And I don't know, I like to sleep at night. It just makes for more peace within myself, but it also, it's a long career. As I say, I've had people come back to me 5-10 years later, go, oh, you told me to go and speak to someone else, and you said maybe when I get to about this stage I can come and see you. Well, I'm there now. I'd love to work with you. So, and people hear about that. So I think that approach is sort of transparent, candid, casual, quite candid up front, and not always looking for a sale. Like I'm more looking for long-term relationships that are going to work really, really well both sides. And if I can't find that early on in the conversation, I'm pretty quick to kill it. So I think that's been something which has been quite refreshing over here. And then another difference, this is probably more, I don't know whether this is more just my own way of doing business, but I have found that there's a transactional way of doing business over here. It's transactional. It's quite often, you have a conversation with someone, they'll send you a contract straight away. Like it can move quite quickly. And I guess I'm just more about just confirming that, this is a good fit. This is a long-term relationship potential. Those types of things have worked quite well for us. And I think they've definitely helped us stand out a bit.
Mm-hmm. And look, Russ, I've known you for many years, and I know that you are got massive high amount of integrity, and just the way you conduct yourself is just truly awesome. What you've highlighted there is actually, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful traits that a human can have: honesty, integrity, and understanding the importance of authentic long-term relationships. Do you feel that more broadly in the business world, or even in your own industry, is that a common feature? Is that being commonly applied?
No. And that sucks. That's not to say it's not being applied by a lot of people. It is. Most of the people that or anyone that I'm going to refer work to, for example, is someone who I know has got that very honest approach with integrity, who just wants to look after people. Is it broadly applicable across all business? No, it's not, which I guess makes it a competitive advantage, which kind of sucks a bit. Just, being a good person makes you stand out, but it does. I think especially over here, people are very commercially driven. They can be quick to try to close. So that said, I've got a pretty good network of businesses here in Austin. So we are in Austin, in Texas. There's a huge startup culture here. I'm in a group called Entrepreneurs Organization, which I was in Australia as well. And the businesses that I mix alongside within EO, 90% of those, 95% of those are very similar in terms of that approach. But we only make up a small percentage of the overall economy.
Mm-hmm. And Russ, obviously you've set up, I'm aware that you've set up quite a few businesses in Australia, and many of which have been very successful. And obviously you've got a large family, beautiful wife, beautiful kids. Has it always been, I guess, an easy road for you, or have you found that there have been various bumps or certain things that you've had to overcome as part of your broader journey?
Oh, look, I like to tell people I've taken the scenic route, that's for sure. Good
answer.
Certainly not smooth. Not smooth. But I wouldn't change it necessarily. I got booted out of uni for rocking up to the final straw, because this is in the late 90s. I was doing an arts degree, and I'd been asked to show cause a couple of times. I don't even know if they still do this, but show cause is basically, you're failing 2 or more of your subjects. You got to sit before the panel who run the course and show cause as to why they should let you stay in. And I'd done that twice in 2 years. So I was on the edge. And then I rocked up to an exam barefoot and drunk, and they didn't ask me to show cause again. They just said, you're out. So from that point, I started working in pubs, and a lot of this just comes back to just being an alcoholic and into all sorts of stuff that I shouldn't have been into, partying and girls and all sorts of stuff and other stuff. But in terms of the journey, like from there, I worked in pubs for years. As I said, I started DJing. I met a very close connection to both of ours, DJing, and did that for quite a number of years. And then I worked. I was a copywriter. I sold experiential events. I worked for an experiential event agency selling those services. So I've been in and around marketing, sales and marketing, because when I was in pubs, I was looking after marketing for entertainment in pubs for a good 20 odd years. And over the journey, I owned and ran a number of different companies. So I had an events business back in the early 2000s. I've had a little fashion business, which didn't make it on my LinkedIn profile. It sort of started and stopped. And also had a pretty successful celibate wedding business in Australia as well. So there's been lots there, but the common thread, the red thread that's sort of gone through it all has been that sort of marketing. I've always loved marketing. I've loved advertising. So the copywriter in me and the kid who used to love watching the TV ads between each of the shows has been pretty consistent throughout my career. So to be able to land, in another country, to be able to work in a field that I've been passionate about for a long time, is something I consider myself. I don't know if it's lucky, because I did take the scenic route, as I said, but it's definitely a place that I'm really comfortable and really happy to be.
Russ, thanks very much for sharing that little snippet of your journey. I love the reference to scenic routes. I think that's absolutely appropriate because, in my view, a lot of people think that the journey to success, and they look at these really successful people, and they probably think it's quite linear. One thing builds upon the other, and then off we go. But a lot of the time, life is complicated. It's not a linear journey. There's ups, there's downs, there's trials, there's tribulations. So I think it's really important to celebrate that and honor that. The fact that it isn't just a linear journey. It isn't necessarily that easy, and people do have to overcome a lot of pitfalls a lot of the time. And one thing that actually caught me, one keyword that you mentioned just before, was your reference to alcoholism. If you're comfortable to speak, could you maybe elaborate a little bit further on what happened there?
Yeah, of course. I'm a pisshead and I can't drink. I'm terrible at it. So I like most Australians, I think the Australian drinking culture is pretty average, like, if I'm going to be frank. And I fell into some really, really bad habits early on. I was a pretty good footballer growing up. I played senior football at 16, and you'd finish the game, get off the field, and there'd be a can of EB there, and that was like one of the hallmarks of achievement and of success. And bang, slam it down. And I just drank a lot for a long time, sort of 15 years, and I didn't realize. And it was just part of. It wasn't any different to anything. All my friends are pissheads, but they seemed to be able to get forward in life in a way that I wasn't so much. But it didn't really register at the time. But as I mentioned before, it got me booted out of uni, and working in pubs from uni, potentially not the best place to be for someone who does like the taste of it. But that's where I ended up. And DJing, again, potentially not the best environment for someone who does have a problem with it. So I kind of, through my copywriting and then working in experiential events and dabbling in marketing here and there, I never really took that leap forward in my career, and I didn't realize it at the time, but alcohol was holding me back a lot. It was just something that, I've had lots of friends over the journey who've partied, and, you've got friends as well that, that you party with them, and then all of a sudden you see them and they're doing all these amazing things with their career and their life, and they're traveling and they're buying stuff. And I'm like, that's weird. I was just at Revs with him at, 10 a.m. on Sunday, and he's off doing these things. I wonder why I'm not doing these things. And it wasn't until afterwards that I realized that I was just drinking a whole lot more, and I just was not holding it anywhere near as well as those people. So it actually took my wife, Angelique, who you know very well, We'd had one child, and it was my dad's 60th birthday, 2012, and I had a few too many, and she basically just said, it's and she was pregnant with twins as well, and she said it's either alcohol or your family. You choose because you can't have both. And that was the 20th of October, 2012. And I haven't had a drink since. So it's just ticked over 2 years just recently. But, speaking of that kind of unknowingly stalled career all that time, pretty much as soon as I stopped, I had a lot of health problems as well. Like, it was really, really bad for me. I had high blood pressure. I was borderline diabetes. I had hypertension. That was terrible. But I was quite fit growing up. So then as soon as I stopped drinking, I got back into fitness. My career, weirdly, some correlation there, started going up. I started making more money, started managing teams, started doing all sorts of things. Keynote speaking, built a successful wedding business. All these things happened when I stopped drinking. And I just realized how much it had been holding me back. And it was just little things like, I was like the king of absent-minded things. Like, I'd just lose my keys. I'd lose my wallet. Where did I park the car? I don't know. Like, my memory was shot. And then, off the back end of just a year or so of not drinking, all of a sudden I just was sharp, and it was like, it felt like being a kid again. It was like, oh, that's right. I was a smart kid. I just doled it for like 15 years. So yeah, I remember like saying to Anne, just ask me a question, ask me like where I left something. And I'd go, okay, so I was in this room. This is like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I was in this room. Sorry, this is back in 2013. I'd say to Anne, watch my memory. Ask me a question about something that happened 2 weeks ago. She'd ask me the question. I go, okay, cool. So I was in this room. I was sitting next to Lordy, and he was wearing this, and here's what he said about this, and that's where the lighter is. Like, it was just like all of the synapses going poo, 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 poo. Again, like the brain had been reactivated after 15 years in a dormant state.
Wow. Russ, thank you so much for sharing that really intimate personal story. It sounds like you've definitely gone through quite a bit, and to share that publicly is it's well done. Thank you. Because I think a lot of people need to get the permission to understand that you can be human and things do happen in life. But also, it's never too late to change and never too late to get yourself back on track. And to hear it coming from a role model such as yourself.
Like also, yeah. So I was just going to say, I think also like what's lost in that is my wife, who's the real hero. Like, she's the one who pulled me. Like, I used to joke that she pulled me kicking and screaming out of Revolver, very famous club in Melbourne, to be a dad, into adulthood. And that was the first thing. And then she, whipped me into line, and like, she's the one who had to deal with drunken Russ in the aftermath. Everyone else got to see the fun stuff. Oh, Russ, he's been hilarious. Oh, whatever. They didn't get to see me at home, not so fun. So there's that. But you're right. Like, people don't talk about it enough, I think. So, and I think especially in Australian culture. So I've tried to be pretty open about it. Whenever people ask me, why don't you drink? I'm terrible at it. I'm really, really bad at it. So, I just try to give people permission, as you say. That's a great way to put it, to just let their guard down. And also, I don't know. I just think there's probably heaps of people out there who just don't even realize they've got a problem. I didn't. Maybe I did. But I would have liked to have heard more people like myself saying it. It probably would have made me feel a bit more open to following down that path. Like, I tried AA. That didn't work for me. But through Angie's support, I got there myself. Yep.
And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, the importance of role models is really sort of underestimated. It's so important to have good role models, both in the business world, but also in the personal world. And the two don't have to be separate. In the end, one was affecting the other for you. And I think a lot of the time for a lot of people, that they do affect each other. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I think you're right. Like, in terms of like, I guess that's the thing too. Like, there's lots of cheesy sayings around this. Like, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. Have you heard that before?
No, not that one.
And if you I think about myself, like, just think about that. Think about those 5 people that you spend the absolute most time about? Because you're pretty much, the average of those. And I think about 2003 Revolver, like the 5 people I was spending all that time around versus, potentially who I am now. And especially since Ange came into my life, like that's just, makes you kind of lift your own levels of, standards of how you want to be and how you want, what you want to become, those sorts of things. But yeah, on role models, like I guess you can either reactively or proactively seek them out, like maybe you're just in the wrong scene and they're just the people that you look up to because that's where you are. Or maybe there's something else you want to be. You want to be proactive about it. I had really good advice. I'm a big fan of like actually having official mentors. I kind of unofficially mentor. I try not to, and I've very, very time poor, but I always end up, I've got probably a half dozen people right now who would consider me that to them. And we connect on LinkedIn and we chat and stuff. And I just talk them through bits and pieces and try to just, most of it's just going, oh, here's how I fucked this up. Don't do this. Or here's what I wish I might have done a bit differently. Here's how I would have approached that conversation. Here's another time that I screwed it up. And I think like just being able to share the 15 years of just of learning, fumbling along the way, just gives you a whole lot to be able to share with other people. But then in terms of proactively going out and seeing those, I had really good advice from someone quite a few years ago that you should, if you're quite career focused, or even personal growth focused, to be honest, like you should look for someone who's 5 years ahead of where you are and also someone who's 20 plus years ahead of where you are, right? And that 5-year person is someone who they need to be able to get in the nitty gritty tactical stuff with you to help you navigate through whatever rut it is you're in, whether it's personal, whether it's fitness, whether it's career, whatever it is. It's close enough in their rearview mirror that they can get right in there and they can pull out and give you good insights. And they can be really frank about it too, because you don't want a mentor who's just going to it's nice to be positive, but if it's just someone who's going to push you up and say yes all the time, sometimes you need someone to give you just a whack on the back of the head and just go, yeah, don't be like that. But then if you can get someone who's also 20 plus years ahead, but there you're looking for someone, not just for me, it was trying to find someone who wasn't just in a position business-wise, but someone who I aspired from their, what they've done with their family and from a wealth perspective and a lifestyle and those sorts of things. If they've got that amazing career and they've got that balance of all those other things that I think makes them a successful person and contributor to community, that's the sort of person that I'm really happy to have in my life and to meet with. And I remember I had a guy back in Melbourne. I haven't got one of those further ahead ones here now. I really need to seek one out. And our first couple of catch-ups, all he was asking about was Ange. And I was like, it's weird. He was just asking, so he was asking really like personal stuff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but then like after a couple of sessions, I realized he's like, that is literally the like most important thing in your whole world. So you're focusing on all these other things, Russ. And I know you're meeting with your other guy and you chat about like career moves and all sorts of stuff, but like, what does it matter? You're not happy at home. And if the future that you're going to build is not being looked after properly. So I find that long-term mentor really good for just aligning with what's really, really important to you, those rocks that are really important to you, or that rock. So what about you, Dan? Like, do you actively seek out mentors like that? Or is that something anyone's ever spoken to you about?
To be honest, it's the company I currently work for. They do have a mentorship program, and I'm, as I sort of rise up through the ranks, I have increasingly seen the value in having a mentor. I have had several mentors over the years. Because you don't always have the answers, right? So you might be really good at what you do. You might have great core skills. You might even be a balanced person. But in the end, if you can get wholesome advice from people you trust about their journey, and just take the bits that you need from there, I think there's real value in that, because you don't always have all the answers. But I think just coming back to one thing you were saying before, the alignment of your personal values and your professional values, I reckon that is so incredibly important, because both are part of your identity, right? There's no point of pretending that whatever you do at work doesn't affect your overall psyche and your overall identity. It's a part of you. It's just a different shade. So it's so important for those things to be aligned. Otherwise, otherwise you're basically just splitting your personality and acting like two different people. And I think maybe in the past, particularly with certain things that you do on the weekends and extracurricular activities, people would hide it. But these days, it's all a part of your fabric. It's all a part of you. And if you're not celebrating that authenticity, I think you're not doing justice to yourself, personally.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. And I also think like that whole compartmentalizing of I'm this person over here and I'm this person over here. Then what you have is like, I don't know, one of those groups of people is getting an inauthentic version of yourself. Like if you can't be really open. Can I ask you a question just quickly? I'm sorry, just going to wreck up with your post. Can you hear that? There's someone mowing a lawn. They're literally
right.
just
it's all good.
up right now.
I had a garbage truck that pulled up just before, so no stress. We live in the real world, right?
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, okay, cool. So I think like as I've gotten older, I've gotten much more comfortable. I can tell you straight right now, like in my 20s when I was partying really, really hard, like way too hard, and having a lot of fun, I literally put that person in another box in my life, in my head, that never, ever showed their face at work. And I tried to keep it completely different. At work, I just never spoke about it. It was just something which was just never part of me. And it wasn't until I've got older that I realized, oh, wait a sec, they can coexist. Not only can they coexist, it makes for a richer, more more authentic and just what's the word? A more interesting person, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like it makes for someone who is going to be able to connect with people a lot more freely, both colleagues, clients, whoever. And I think that it's something that if I could go back and tell Russ, there's a lot of things I would tell. Actually, one thing I would tell Russ most is just stop drinking. You'd be terrible at it. But other than that, it would be, just try to bring more of your authentic self. And the funny thing is that there is just come to something in my head now. That for me though was alcohol was like, I can go and be this big loose Russ, and get out there and, do all those different sorts of things. And then when I wasn't drinking, I tended to, be really kind of restricted and live within these realms of what sober Russ is like, not realizing that they're both just Russ. And I never used to be able to public speak unless I'd had a few drinks. Like that just seems the fucking most ridiculous thing because when I drink, I slur my words and I ramble, and it's not not good traits for a public speaker. But just funny the way you on reflection you realize how certain viewpoints you had were perhaps just a little bit off.
Yeah, mate. I can so relate to what you just said. I used to have basically the corporate Dan, the one with the mask, the one with the sort of the scripted persona, the polished, and then I'd have the Dan that would go out on the weekends, like we used to back in the day. And I would keep the two completely separately. And I'd have one group of people that I would interact with at work, and they were awesome in their own right. And then I'd have a completely different set of group of people that I'd interact with on the weekends. Totally different conversations, totally different views of Dan and how I express myself. And then I thought, this is ludicrous. Like you said, this is a part of me. And I started basically losing some of that filter at work and talking a little bit more about, work life in my personal life. And the way that I learned to interact with people, it was just like, I just can't put it into words. The change in my interactions, particularly in the corporate world, seeing the authenticity come through.
Yep.
You can see the effect on people and you can see how much they're put at ease. Like I would never be doing a podcast if it wasn't for this change that I've made. This is something that's very foreign to me and still quite new. But there's just such value in it because it's a part of your personality. So let's celebrate it. Let's develop it. And it's amazing how much your interactions day to day can change once you do start fusing the two and applying the good sides from both of them.
100%. 100%. And I think I spoke quite a bit about how more, from an external perspective, like how much more interesting it makes you, how much easier you connect with people, build relationships, rapport, all those sorts of things. But it just makes life better. You know what I mean? It's like, it just makes your own experience so much more rich and so much more full. So from a selfish perspective, it's just so much nicer to be able to just have your guard down and just be yourself 24/7. What do you get up to? oh man, geez, I hit it hard, did this, did that. Oh, we went here, we went there. Like, yeah, it's freeing, don't you think?
Absolutely. Liberating.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting on that front is like, I know I'll keep bringing her up, but she's like the like ultimate role model for me. But like, Ange, that was one thing that always got me. Like when she was sober around people, she was this bubbly, vivacious self. When she was drunk, she was bubbly, vivacious self. Like it was just kind of, it was just, there wasn't two versions of Ange. It was pretty much the same person, you know? And for me, it was like two very, very different people. And it took me years to get to a point where I was like, I can be whatever I want to be sober. You know, it's really just a choice. It's not, it's nothing other than that. So being able to have, you know, back on role models, a role model like Ange in my life, who I just see be so amazing with the kids. She's so out there, and we're big on just making sure the kids know that they can be themselves and they can let their guard down. They can feel joy and be, you know, that, you know, be the light that shines for people. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what we really want to instill in our kids, but they can't be that unless we're that. So they see it from Ange. So it's really incumbent on me. We went to we went to a Spurs game at NBA just the other day, and you know they've got the dance cam, and Kobe, my son's like, "Come on, Dad, get up," and he's like dancing, going crazy, like so that the camera will go on him. And of course, in my head, I'm like, "Oh my god, this is the last thing in the world I want to do," but I can't. I've got to show him that yes, it's okay. So I'm up there, I'm just getting loose and just trying to get on camera. But yeah, and of course they put Ange on camera because she was somewhere else with Cielo at the time, and she was just going nuts, and so she went up on the big screen. So anyway, it's just good to have good role models.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Russ, I think we've spoken a lot about role models and about sort of overcoming our personal demons and also fusing, I guess, our, not fusing, but let's call it integrating the various personalities that we have inside and outside of work. Going a little bit deeper now, do you feel like you were put on this earth for a particular purpose?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, my purpose is my kids. It's my family. That's that's like the only thing that seems remotely important to me. You know, like building the business, doing all those other things. Yes, great, and I want to achieve stuff, and I want to be able to have impact and influence and help businesses and do all these different things. But like that sits like a fairly distant second to being a good dad and being a good husband. I like those things to align. Like I like my kids to be proud of that. I like Anne's to be proud of what I'm doing in the in my career in business as well. But it all starts and ends with, am I present with the kids when I'm with them? Am I like we're just going for goal tracking now for 2023. We're a few days behind, but we're nearly finished. But we started with the personal, the family relationships, and making commitments there because all of the career stuff and everything else financially has to work around that for us. That is literally our purpose. So it's like, okay, how can I? For me, one of my things is I want to have at least. It doesn't sound like much, but when you've got 4 kids and you've got a business, you've got all these other things, it's going to take some doing. But I want to have at least 1 hour alone, one-on-one with each of my kids each week. Doesn't sound like much. 168 hours in a week, just one. But it's not something I've ever done previously. It's going to take some shuffling of my calendar. I'm literally going to block it out of my calendar every week so that it can get done. But in terms of purpose, that's it for me. Just being a great husband, great father, and building a happy family, building happy kids who feel like they can achieve anything with hard work.
I want to just celebrate and pause for a second about the simplicity of what you've just mentioned, and the beautiful nature of the simplicity that you mentioned. I think so many people, particularly in the business world, aspire to be something monumental, something amazing. You know, I want to make millions of dollars or have 1 million followers on Instagram or make this gigantic global impact. And, you know, hearing what you've just said there, it's that there's something just so prehistoric and just simple about it. And it's amazing because, you know, why else are we on this world? For our family and our tribe. and to express that publicly and give people the permission to, not necessarily just need to hit such ridiculous heights. And look, if you do want to hit those heights, that's fantastic, and we'll celebrate that as well. But I think hearing a leader such as yourself express that, I think we need to celebrate that. And thank you for sharing that.
No worries. I mean, I guess the thing is, people might think that they're mutually exclusive, but they're not. Like, I do want to build, I'd love to build $1 billion company. I'd love to be on the cover of Forbes. I'd love to do all these things. They're just not as important to me as being a really great dad. And if I can do both, unreal. If I can make my kids proud while doing those things, amazing. But the priority, the purpose is family. And the other stuff makes me really, really happy. And if it aligns with making my family happy and healthy and proud, unreal. If it doesn't align, that's when I've got to start looking at choices. Like I need to be able to build a life that is successful on all fronts, most importantly on the family front.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like without that family side, without the family front, without the backing of your mentor and your beautiful kids, you probably can't build a successful business anyway, right? Because it's so fused with your personality.
Well, I know. Yeah, I know that I wouldn't have the drive. Just for me personally, I'm trying to think. If I was just like an individual guy, yeah, I don't think I'd have the drive to do this type of thing. I think I could maybe be successful doing other things. I'd probably be like I'd probably just be working sales, selling someone's product and making good money and buying lots of shiny things. But I wouldn't be thinking much more impact outside of that. Whereas right now, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I could go back to Australia and make a lot more in sales than we're making now building a business. But it's about, part of coming over here is also about giving the kids this experience that I never had growing up. Growing up in another country, learning about, learning that you don't live, this bubble that you live in is just one of 7 billion bubbles in the world. Giving them that perspective. Because I know myself, like when I started traveling, I didn't start traveling until I was in my 20s. And then you start realizing, oh, wow, there's all this stuff going on. Why do I worry about such dumb stuff? And I'd love to have kids grow up and just be worldly and just have that perspective a lot sooner than I did. So in terms of like making them work together, as I said, having the kids come over here and experience this, and a big part of being over here as well, we want to experience as much as possible, get as much travel in as possible. We have seen so much of the US already, and we're going to do South America and Caribbean and all these different things, in large part so the kids can experience stuff that we just never got to experience while we're making the most of this adventure.
Amazing. And Russ, I know we've got to wrap it up in a sec because I know that you're super busy running that household of yours and the business. Final question: if you could sit down with your 20-year-old self, what would be the top insight you would share?
Yeah, as I said before, the funny thing is, because if I said this to my 20-year-old self, maybe my life is different to where it is now. Because the first thing that comes into my mind is to just tell Russ, hey, Russ, just maybe don't drink. Maybe just put that beer down. Try something else. But then, if that happens, I probably don't meet Ange at Revolver. So maybe I can't say that. I'll tell you what, I would talk probably more around what hard work actually looks like, because my 20-year-old self didn't really have much clue about what putting yourself out there, what grit, what determination, pushing to the edge, outside of, playing a pretty good standard of footy and training as hard as hard coaches will train you. I've never had that internal motivation to work hard, either physically or career-wise. So I'd probably like to be able to have a conversation just around what hard work really looks like. Doesn't necessarily mean long hours. Probably long hours are going to come into it, but what are you doing with those hours? How are you actually impacting, the place of work where you're at, or your health or your fitness or whatever? It would be hard work. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Well, Russ, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. Episode 1, I think it's been incredibly valuable hearing your insights, your journey, and your learnings. Where can the audience find you if they want to connect?
No worries. Best place to find me is LinkedIn. I am pretty active on there, so just search for Russ Macumber on LinkedIn, and you'll find me there. Yeah, that's the easiest way to catch me. I'm on a bunch of other platforms too, but that's the one that I'm most active on.
Excellent. Well, yeah, thanks again, Russ. Yeah, it's been awesome to do this with you, and yeah, I wish you well for the future. No doubt we'll catch up in a different forum.
Awesome, Dan. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate being your first guest. This was really fun. I can't wait to hear lots more episodes.
Sounds good. Well, fantastic. There you have it, dear listeners. That's a wrap on our inaugural episode 1. If you found value in the show, I'd really appreciate your feedback. Like, subscribe, comment, and spread the word, spread the love. It would actually mean the world to me. And thanks for lending me your ears wherever in the world you are. Till next time, go in peace, and may success be with you.